Mass incarceration is a term used to describe the substantial increase in the number of incarcerated people in the United States prisons over the past 40 years. We chose mass incarceration because it is a prevalent issue in our country today. We were interested in this topic because we wanted to dispel some of the myths about the causes of this injustice, as well as things we can do as citizens and students to combat this. The majority of inmates are incarcerated for nonviolent drug offenses, which make up 42% of all inmates, according to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines are a factor in the higher incarceration rates for nonviolent drug offenses. Mandatory sentencing was created to ensure fairness and limit discretion in the judicial process. It was created to deter bias, but it took away a judge's ability to use their discretion in sentencing for low-level drug crimes. The mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines have contributed to the U.S. having a large population of incarcerated individuals. There is also a large gender gap in the prison and jail population, with males accounting for 93% of the prison population, according to Federal Bureau of Prisons.
According to the Bureau of Prisons, black people represent 38% of incarcerated individuals, white people 58%, native people 2.2%, and Asians 1.5%. When keeping population representation in mind, this data becomes more troubling. Black people represent 12.3% of citizens in America, while representing 38% of inmates in prison. The graph displays the different colors by state per 100,000 people. The darker the color, the more incarcerated in the state. It's important to note the old racism that still exists in the southern states. Laws set in place years ago have affected these communities through having substantially harsher consequences on crimes committed. Jim Crow consequences are still affecting communities around the United States.
President Nixon's The War on Drugs campaign is one of the root causes for the number of inmates currently in the system. According to a Justice Policy Institute report in 2005, around the time Nixon implemented his plan, the number of incarcerated Americans was around 500,000. Since 1980, this number has grown to 2,500,000. In addition to Nixon's part, the school-to-prison pipeline is responsible for sending many young students into the prison system. These students are often removed from school due to their actions and turn to crime as an alternative way to make a living. Because of the age of the system and the decreasing age of those involved, it's likely that a large portion of today's imprisoned are not first-time offenders. A study by the National Institute of Justice showed that of 400,000 tracked prisoners, about 2/3 were arrested in the span of 3 years after their releases.
This slide highlights the implications that mass incarceration has on family life and employment. When a wage-earning parent is suddenly out of the picture, the burden falls on the adult and/or children to provide, pressuring families economically. This continues even after the absent parent has served the time. Mass incarceration dramatically affects the amount of money made on average in weekly earnings, with a $1.76 difference, dramatically affecting the amount of weeks per year employed by 9 weeks, resulting in an overwhelming difference in overall annual earnings by $15,600 displayed in the graph. This money deficit can have great impacts on family life and overall security.
Statistics from the U.S. Sentencing Commission show that black people are given 19.1% longer sentences for committing similar crimes as other races. The Drug Policy Alliance shows that black people are targeted more and arrested at higher rates that do not line up with the percentages of race based on the population. These slides will focus on rehabilitation and restorative justice. The process for rehabilitation is important because once people are released from prison, they will make decisions that will keep them out. Restorative justice can also help families get closure and reconcile with the offender.
The presentation is designed to make you, the students or viewers, feel empowered to enact change. There are many things that would help this epidemic, including reducing sentence minimums, eliminating prison time for lower-level crimes, and lastly, invest the savings that we could make from less people in prison back into education and re-entry programs in order to remedy this cycle. But what can you do as an individual? We strongly encourage you to write to our state legislators and Congress to change sentencing laws for lower-level crimes. This small act can make a huge change.